Imagine being the most powerful man in the entire world. You command legions across several continents and hold absolute power over life and death for millions of subjects. But despite all this external authority, you simply cannot command your own racing heart in the middle of the night. It is 3 o'clock in the morning, and the silence is heavy. The year is not 2026, but the crushing weight of the world on your shoulders feels exactly the same as what we feel today. You are 40 years old and your responsibilities are exhaustive. The noise of the outside world is deafening, and the pressure to perform never stops. Marcus Aurelius sat exactly where you are sitting now, dealing with the same ghosts of anxiety and uncertainty. He was not in a comfortable office with air conditioning or in a modern and elegant apartment in the center of a metropolis. He was in a cold and damp war tent on the dangerous border of the empire, writing to himself under the flickering and unstable light of a single candle. He was not writing to obtain fame, followers, or so that we would read his words centuries later in history books. He was fighting desperately for his own mental sanity and for the balance of his soul. This is not a video about empty promises of cheap self-help or about superficial morning routines that usually fail right in the first week of practice. This is about building the inner citadel in a solid way. This is about forging an iron mind that does not break and does not shatter when the world tries to bend your will. If you feel that life is happening to you instead of happening for you, know that you are in the right place now. We are going to stop the deafening noise today. We are going to build your strength from the inside out because you have lived long enough as a helpless victim of your own external circumstances. It is time to enter the deep silence of the emperor and reclaim the sacred throne of your own mind. The transition from chaos to absolute calm begins with a single conscious choice in how you decide to view your world. You have been looking for an exit from stress, but the exit is actually an entrance into a much deeper part of yourself. Are you ready to see what exists behind the curtain of your own irrational fear? What we find there will change everything you know about strength. Before we can build the impenetrable walls of your citadel, we must first look honestly at what is poisoning the land where you step every day. The foundation of a powerful life requires the immediate cleaning of the mental terrain you occupy. You are wasting precious hours of your life on people who do not even know you exist, and this is a silent tragedy that repeats every day in your routine. We call this modern behavior being informed or simply connected to the world. But the Emperor Marcus Aurelius had a much raw and more realistic definition for this habit. He called it a voluntary prison of the soul. He observed with a sharp wisdom in his work Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 4, paragraph 18, that a person gains an extraordinary amount and a true wealth of time by simply not looking at what his neighbor says, does, or thinks in daily life. Stop and think honestly about your morning routine right now. At the exact moment you open your eyes, even before breathing with awareness or giving thanks for another day of life, you stretch out your arm and invite the opinions of others. Choreographed successes and fabricated crises of thousands of strangers into your most intimate sanctuary. You are starting your day in a totally defensive and reactive position. This is the first big leak in your internal citadel, and it is where your vital energy drains away without you noticing the damage. For all of us who are navigating the heavy demands of a demanding career, taking care of children's education, and managing the pressures of life between 30 and 50 years old, our attention is the only currency that really has value in the market of human existence. When you check that infinite feed without a real purpose, you are handing over your gold for free to algorithms that were specifically designed to keep you distracted and anxious. The emperor deeply understood that human focus is a finite and very precious resource. If you spend this resource on the trivial and on what is irrelevant, absolutely nothing will be left for what is essential and transformative in your journey. I am not suggesting that you delete all your accounts or that you move to an isolated cabin in the woods to live like a hermit. What I am proposing is a radical and conscious diet of your senses. You must assume today the position of severe guardian of your own mind. Every time you scroll the screen without a clear objective, you are handing over the keys to your kingdom to a complete stranger who does not care at all about your well-being or your future. Stop being a passive spectator in the lives of other people and start being the active architect of your own success story. You have a limited amount of energy to burn today. Do you really want to use it to compare your complex reality with the best edited moments of someone else? Or would you rather use it to build something that has real meaning and that lasts beyond the next click? The true cost of a constant digital distraction is not just the minutes you lose on the clock, but the extraordinary person you stop becoming while you are hypnotized by the glow of a cell phone screen. Your maximum potential is stifled by the noise of opinions that add nothing to your character. Now that you understand how to clean the external noise and regain control of your mental entry door, you need to take the next step and prepare yourself for the exact moment when things really go wrong and life tests you with brute force. Most people live in a state of constant and totally unnecessary shock simply because things did not go exactly as planned on the paper of the imagination. You wake up in the morning expecting traffic to flow perfectly freely, that your boss will be understanding with each of your failures, and that your family will collaborate with each of your smallest desires for comfort. However, when the cold and hard reality frontally disagrees with these infantile expectations, your inner peace collapses in a matter of a few seconds. This extreme fragility is what keeps us in a perpetual cycle of frustration and emotional exhaustion that drains our vitality every minute that passes. Marcus Aurelius left us a powerful and fundamentally different technique to maintain absolute composure even in the face of the greatest imaginable chaos. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 2, Paragraph 1, he instructs that you should speak to yourself right at the beginning of the day that you will meet intrusive, ungrateful, insolent, envious, and antisocial people. This should not be faced as a cheap exercise in pessimism, but rather as elite training for your own mind. We call this ancient practice negative visualization, or the pre-mortem of failure. The logic behind this is simple, but devastatingly effective in your daily practice. If you have already anticipated the worst possible scenario for that difficult business meeting or for that family conflict that seems inevitable now, the real event will totally lose the power to hurt or unbalance you emotionally. You stop reacting impulsively because the element of surprise has been completely eliminated from your mental equation. Anger and frustration are the direct daughters of unmet expectation. When you remove the illusion of a perfect day, you gain the armor of emotional invincibility. Think about how your life would drastically change if you stopped demanding that the whole world be perfect just so you can be happy. Real strength is not in avoiding the inevitable chaos of modern life, but in walking through it with the absolute calm of someone who has already been in that place in thought long before leaving home. You become invulnerable because nothing is truly unexpected for a mind that has prepared itself in advance and with rigor. Marcus Aurelius knew that human behavior is predictable in its constant imperfection. By accepting that the world is populated by people who act out of ignorance of what is truly good or bad, you stop taking the offenses of others personally. Their error is not a deliberate attack on you, but a failure in their judgment. This gives you an immense advantage in any environment where pressure is constant and judgment is severe. This technique builds the foundation of your internal citadel and allows you to create a maneuvering space where before there was only blind reaction. In the middle of a heated argument, negative visualization gives you that necessary second of pause to choose intelligent silence instead of a useless shout. The emperor practiced this every day to protect his sanity and his precious time. Prepare yourself consciously to face the worst of every situation, and you will guarantee the best of yourself in any circumstance that arises in your path today. However, there is a silent danger that arises right after this internal strengthening and that you need to know now. It is the constant and addictive need for others to recognize and validate your new strength in the face of life. Have you ever felt that strange and persistent void right after achieving something truly incredible in your career, or in your personal life simply because no one was around to applaud or to like your moment of glory? This feeling is the clear symptom of the addiction to external validation, and it is the silent poison that kills your mental freedom day after day without you noticing. We live in a world of pure exhibitionism, where it seems that an action only has real value if it is recorded and validated by a digital audience hungry for novelties. Marcus Aurelius, the man who had the eyes of the whole world, turned to him every second for being the emperor of Rome, chose to follow the path exactly opposite to vanity. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 5, paragraph 6, he explains with an admirable clarity that the man who practices a good action should not go around proclaiming what he did to the four winds, but should be like a grapevine that produces its fruit naturally and seeks nothing else beyond having produced what is its own by nature. Imagine for a moment the overwhelming power of performing your work with impeccable excellence, of being an incredible romantic partner, or a present and dedicated father, without feeling the slightest internal need for the world or social networks to recognize your constant effort. When you seek the applause of others, you automatically become a miserable slave to the mood and judgment of others. If people clap for you, your ego inflates and you feel good, but if they fall silent or ignore you for a moment, your world completely collapses. The true art of becoming invisible is not about hiding from the world or running away from responsibilities, but about finding your maximum reward in the act itself, and never in the reaction that this act provokes in the external environment. Between 30 and 50 years of age, we spend too much time trying to prove our value to people who are too busy trying to prove their value to us. It is an emotional rat race that leads nowhere and only generates deep exhaustion in the soul. You need to break this cycle of dependency right now if you want to have peace of mind. Be like the sun, which shines with all its intensity, without asking for a single thank you for each ray of light it sends to the earth. Your satisfaction must come exclusively from knowing that you fulfilled your role as a human being with the greatest possible integrity. This voluntary silence about your own virtues creates a wall of mental protection that no one in this world can knock down or invade. You become the final judge of your own actions and stop handing over the control of your happiness to other hands. When you stop caring if people noticed your dedication, you gain an internal authority that is felt by everyone, even if you do not say a single word about it. It is the silent strength of someone who knows who they are and what they are capable of without needing a megaphone to announce their arrival to the room. This posture of moral self-sufficiency is what separates strong men from eternal attention seekers. However, to keep this wall standing and functional against the constant attacks of the world, you urgently need to learn to see reality without the heavy emotional filters that usually distort everything that happens around you. It is necessary to see problems as they really are without the luxurious clothes or the horror masks that our mind usually puts on them to scare us. The greater part of your suffering does not come from what actually happened, but rather from the dramatic story you tell yourself about what happened. You usually wrap the raw facts with thick layers of drama, fear, and personal judgment until the original reality disappears completely under the weight of your emotions. Marcus Aurelius had a master's technique to deal with this self-deception that we can call the geometry of the problem. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, paragraph 13, he teaches us to look at things and strip them of all their apparent prestige and glory to see their real essence. He explains in a very direct way that the most expensive and sophisticated wine of the time is actually just fermented grape juice, and that the robe of an emperor dyed with the most coveted royal purple is nothing more than sheep's wool soiled by the blood of a shellfish. When you decide to apply this same implacable logic to your modern problems, the overwhelming power they exercise over you simply evaporates in the air. Think about that heavy insult that took your sleep away last night. If you strip it of all emotion, it is just air vibrating at a specific frequency that hits your ears and nothing more than that. That financial crisis that seems like the end of the world and that causes you palpitations is actually just a digital numerical change in a database on a computer somewhere remote. That person who rejected you or who betrayed you is just a biological body making a decision based on internal electrical and chemical impulses that you cannot control in any way. Stripping reality of its emotional trimmings is the supreme act of intellectual courage that a human being can practice in daily life. You stop reacting to ghosts created by your own mind and finally begin to deal with the facts as they present themselves. Between 30 and 50 years of age, we accumulate many layers of unnecessary importance over expensive objects, corporate titles, and high social status. We need to learn to return to seeing the world with the purity of someone who sees things as they are, without the distorted filter of our own inflated ego thirsty for importance. A luxury watch that costs a fortune is just an assembly of metal gears and glass that marks time in the same way as a simple model. A high-end sports car is just a combination of rubber, metal, and plastic that serves to take you from one point to another. By practicing this geometry of the problem, you will clearly perceive that the vast majority of your greatest current concerns do not possess a solid or real structure, as they are just smoke and mirrors created by your feverish imagination. If you remove the terrible name you give to the problem ceases to exist in that scary and paralyzing way. A divorce is nothing more than the end of a legal contract and the physical change of a housing arrangement between two people. An unexpected dismissal is just the interruption of a flow of tasks and a monthly payment that opens space for another occupation. By looking at the basic components of each personal tragedy, you regain command of your narrative and stop being a helpless victim of life's circumstances. This absolute mental clarity is what allows you to make decisions based on pure reason and not on momentary panic. However, even if you conquer this clarity of external vision, you may still feel deeply overwhelmed by the constant internal noise that resides in the exact place where you spend every millisecond of your daily life. It is necessary to understand that cleaning the external vision is only the beginning of a much deeper and necessary cleaning that must occur urgently within the walls of your own consciousness. Your mental home needs to be a place of order and silence before you can face the outside world with the strength it demands of you now. Your mind is the only place in the whole universe where you are rigorously obliged to live 24 hours a day during all the days of your earthly existence. If this place is permanently dirty, noisy, or infested with undesirable neighbors, you will never know what true rest or deep peace is that you desire so much for your soul. Imagine for a moment that each recurring thought you cultivate is actually a tenant living inside your internal house. Some of these tenants bring order, serenity, and a constant sense of well-being, while others are true emotional vandals who destroy your mental furniture and scream desperately all night long, preventing your sleep and your necessary recovery. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius reminds us in a masterly and forceful way in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 5, paragraph 16, that the human soul becomes dyed by the exact color of its predominant thoughts. If you spend the greater part of your day ruminating on past injustices, feeding deep grievances that should have already been buried, or anticipating future catastrophes that will probably never happen, you are painting the walls of your mental house with somber, heavy, and highly toxic colors. For those who are navigating the most intense and demanding phase of life, between 30 and 50 years old, the exhaustion you feel at the end of the day rarely comes from excessive physical work or overtime at the office. This chronic fatigue almost always comes from the bad management of this chaotic internal neighborhood that you allowed to form silently over the years. You need to have the courage to perform a true mental urban cleaning right now without any type of hesitation or excuse. Immediately stop giving free and comfortable housing to concerns that build nothing useful in your character or in your future. Expel without mercy the thoughts of envy that corrode you from the inside, the feelings of self-pity that weaken you, and the irrational fears that paralyze your productive action in the present. It is absolutely no use trying to escape to a paradisiacal beach or to a luxury trip abroad if you take a violent, noisy, and chaotic neighborhood inside your own head. Peace of mind is not something you find in some remote place of the outside world through a change of scenery. but it is something you establish as the rigorous standard of hygiene for your own daily thinking. When you finally decide that certain types of destructive mental conversation are no longer allowed under your roof, your mind begins to transform into the refuge of silence and strength that you have always desperately sought. It is necessary to treat your mental space with the same respect and rigor you would treat a king's palace. Do not allow any cheap idea or any vulgar impulse to step on the carpet of your consciousness. The quality of your life is determined exclusively by the quality of your mental tenants. If you allow hate or anxiety to live for free in your head, you will pay the rent with your own physical health, with your clarity, and with your longevity. The emperor knew perfectly well that absolute control of the internal environment was the only way to withstand the monumental pressures of an empire in constant war. You are also in a daily war against the chaos of the modern world, and your mind is your main and sacred command post. Keep the windows clean and the corridors empty of all emotional garbage so that you can finally see clearly what really matters in your journey. However, even in a perfectly clean and organized mental house, you will still feel the inevitable weight of daily responsibilities knocking hard at your door, demanding your immediate attention. It is at this moment that you need to understand how to transform the weight of duty into a safe harbor against disorientation. When life seems to lose its meaning, or when the weight of daily obligations feels absolutely unbearable for your shoulders, the real solution is not to run away to a deserted island or hide from your responsibilities, but rather to dive with your whole soul into what is essential and immediate. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius's Book 5, paragraph 1, that at dawn, when you feel difficulty getting out of bed, you should tell yourself firmly that you are waking up to do the sacred work of a human being. He did not see daily duty as a prison or as a heavy burden that he was forced to carry against his will, but he saw the fulfillment of his obligations as the only firm and safe ground under his feet in a world of constant uncertainties. Between 30 and 50 years of age, it is dangerously easy to fall into the mental trap of thinking that your true happiness is somewhere very far from where you are now, or in some hypothetical future that never arrives. You seek big external changes, new beginnings, or spectacular escapes when what you really need urgently is a great and powerful presence in the here and now. Duty is your greatest refuge against mental confusion and against the depression that is born from inactivity or lack of clear purpose. If there is a specific task before you at this exact moment, however simple or mundane it may seem, you must execute it with maximum attention, with the greatest integrity, and with absolute dedication. It does not matter if your current role is leading a large multinational company with thousands of employees, or if it is simply preparing a nutritious meal for your family at the end of a tiring day. By focusing all your energy on the next immediate and necessary step, you instinctively silence the internal voices that say none of this matters, or that life is a void without meaning. Excellence in the performance of your current role is the only thing that truly belongs to you and that no one can take away from you in any way. Stop waiting for magic inspiration or an extraordinary event to start living with meaning, and start acting today, with the discipline of someone who knows exactly who they are and what they came to do in this world. The purpose of life is not something you find on a mystical journey of self-discovery in some remote place, but it is something you inject into each of your daily actions through your willpower. This constancy and duty protects you from external emotional storms and identity crises that usually haunt middle age. When you know what you must do and simply do what needs to be done with excellence, you become an unshakable force of nature, respected by everyone around you. The satisfaction of a well-executed job is the best medicine for the anxiety that is born from procrastination and chronic indecision. The emperor knew that his position demanded sacrifices, but he found peace in the simple fact of being useful to the social whole. You also possess a unique role in the fabric of existence, and the fulfillment of this role is what gives weight and value to your personal story. However, to reach this level of focus and presence that duty demands of you, you urgently need to stop trying to carry the whole world on your shoulders at once and learn once and for all the masterful technique of pruning and radical simplification. To be truly productive and calm, you will need to learn the hidden power that exists in removing instead of just accumulating more and more things in your exhaustive journey. You spent the last 2 decades of your existence desperately trying to add things to your life to finally feel complete and secure in the world. More professional achievements, more material possessions, more social commitments, and more responsibilities that you faithfully believed were the passport to absolute fulfillment. However, what you actually harvested was only a feeling of overwhelming overload that only increased over the years and decades of continuous effort. Marcus Aurelius offers the ultimate solution for this unbearable weight you carry in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 4, paragraph 24, where he states with surgical clarity that the greater part of what we say and do is in no way necessary. If you are able to eliminate the unnecessary in an implacable and constant way, you will automatically have much more tranquility and a wealth of time to dedicate to what really matters for your human essence. Real happiness is not a game of adding external factors, it is a strategic game of subtraction and radical simplification. It is what we call the sacred minimalism of the soul. Stop now and start asking yourself in the face of every desire that arises, every email that arrives, or every new task they try to put on your crowded agenda. Is this really necessary for my virtue or for my life's purpose? If the answer is not an absolute and immediate yes, you must have the courage to cut this distraction without any type of pity or subsequent remorse. By reducing your desires for external things that you do not truly control, you instantly increase your internal strength and your mental sovereignty over your own life. You do not need an even larger house, a faster car, or a more prestigious corporate title to find the peace you seek so much in your sleepless nights. You actually need fewer noises and fewer useless obligations that move you away from your own center of gravity. Between 30 and 50 years old, adult life usually becomes a dangerous accumulation of mental noises and empty obligations that only suck your most precious vital energy. Saying yes to what is irrelevant is the same as saying no to your own peace and your future. Every empty commitment you accept just because of social pressure is one more brick in the high wall that separates you from your own serenity. The pruning technique is what allows a tree to grow with renewed health and give much better fruit in the next harvest season. Remove everything that is superfluous, everything that is false, and everything that exists only to maintain appearances before a society that does not genuinely care about you. The emperor knew perfectly well that his life was too short to be spent on palace nonsense or political intrigues without real value. You should also treat your time as your most precious asset and not as an infinite resource that you can waste on anyone who knocks on your mental door asking for attention. By doing so, you will discover the sharp clarity of what is truly essential for your lasting happiness. Knowing what is essential is only half of the great battle for your mental freedom. The other crucial half is knowing exactly how to react when the outside world tries to force you to act out of pure impulse in moments of extreme pressure. You urgently need to master the art of not being a toy in the hands of chance or the insults of others. How many times have you already said something in a moment of blind fury and deeply regretted it just a few seconds later when the blood cooled and reason returned to its rightful place? The modern and hyper-connected world we live in demands that you react in an absolutely instantaneous way to every aggressive email, every sarcastic comment from a neighbor, or every silly operational error from a team colleague. However, your real strength and your sovereignty reside precisely in the sacred space that exists between what happens to you and what you decide to do about that fact. Marcus Aurelius perfectly understood that the human mind must function as a fortified citadel where the external enemy cannot enter without your express and conscious permission. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 11, paragraph 18, he reminds us in a forceful and necessary way that the consequences of our uncontrolled anger are always much more serious and painful than the original causes that provoked it. When you react immediately to an external provocation, you are handing over on a tray all control of your inner peace to whoever provoked you on purpose. You become a puppet whose strings are pulled by the rudeness of others. Absolute silence is your most lethal and effective weapon in any negotiation or high-pressure interpersonal conflict. By deliberately delaying your response, you regain total power over the situation and completely disorient your opponent. It is not about being a passive, weak, or submissive person, but about being the absolute sovereign over your own basic biological impulses. Feel the heat rising through your chest when someone offends you. Observe this fire with the curiosity of a scientist, and then consciously choose to do nothing. If someone insults you in a gratuitous way and you remain in total silence, the insult starves to death even before it can reach your soul. For those who are at the height of adult life's responsibilities, navigating between 30 and 50 years old, this strategic pause of just 5 seconds can be exactly what saves entire careers from a disaster, or what preserves long-term marriages from words that can never be taken back. Train your brain daily to observe the blind impulse to react with aggressiveness, and then simply let that impulse pass, without taking any physical or verbal action. You are not an animal trained to respond mechanically to external stimuli. You are the emperor of your own will and the absolute owner of your destiny. This rigorous discipline creates an invisible protection shield that nothing in this chaotic world can easily penetrate or break. The pause is the supreme moment when reason takes control and the ego is placed in its proper place of total insignificance. Imagine the immense freedom of no longer being a plaything in the hands of the unstable emotions of other people. When you master the art of the delayed response, you automatically become the most stable and reliable person in any environment where pressure is the constant rule. You begin to act by intelligent choice and not by animal reflex. The world around you may be in flames, but inside your citadel, silence and order prevail in an absolute way. This is the true mark of a Stoic spirit that understood that peace is an internal construction and not a gift from the outside world. Every second you gain before answering is a territory of freedom that you conquer for yourself. Anger is a short circuit of the mind that prevents you from seeing the solution that is right in front of you. By silencing the impulse to scream or defend yourself, you allow wisdom to speak louder. Master your reaction time, and you will master any room you enter. However, there is a final and definitive test that puts all these 9 rules in a radical perspective and reveals what really matters when the time of each of us finally runs out. You live your daily routine as if you were going to last 1,000 years, and as if time were an infinite resource that will never stop flowing from the spring of existence. However, the naked and raw truth is that death is hanging on your shoulder right now, observing every second you waste on what has no real value. This should not be faced in any way as a morbid or depressive thought made to scare you, but rather as the most powerful and transformative filter of clarity that exists for those who have already crossed the 30-year barrier and begin to feel the weight of life's brevity. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote with an almost palpable urgency in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 2, paragraph 11, that you could leave life at this exact moment and that this immediate possibility must rigorously determine everything you do, everything you say, and everything you think. When you finally understand that your time is a finite resource that decreases in an irremediable way with every breath you complete, all the trivialities and dramas of modern life lose their meaning and power over you. That old grievance you carry in your chest for years, that silly and irritating argument in traffic, or the excessive and sick concern with the opinion of strangers on social networks, instantly disappear before the majestic brevity of your existence. Use the awareness of your own mortality as an infallible compass for your daily priorities. If you knew with absolute certainty that today is your last day on earth, would you really spend your precious hours complaining about small inconveniences, or would you choose to demonstrate love and presence for who really matters in your journey? Would you lose yourself in endless digital distractions, or seek the deep peace of your inner citadel? The rehearsal of the last breath gives you back the necessary urgency to live with integrity and courage in the present. Do not make the fatal mistake of leaving being a better or calmer person for tomorrow, because tomorrow is just a fragile promise that life has no obligation to fulfill for you or for anyone else. Live with so much rectitude and purpose now that death, when it inevitably comes, finds absolutely nothing to take besides a body that is just tired of being so useful and of acting with so much virtue. Between 30 and 50 years old, we begin to see the cracks in the myth of youthful immortality, and it is exactly at this point that Stoic philosophy becomes your greatest ally. Death is the final test of all the lessons we have discussed so far, because it strips reality and removes all social masks and corporate titles that you have accumulated. Faced with the end, only your character and the quality of your mind remain as your only real heritage. Do not be afraid to look at the end, because it is this look that gives brightness and color to your present. Every minute you live with this awareness is a minute of real freedom. Stop acting as if you had all the time in the world and start treating every conversation, every task, and every thought as if they were your last contribution to the universe. This clarity gives you a strength that nothing can shake and a calm that other people cannot understand. Now that you have in your hands the 9 fundamental keys of the Emperor for an unshakable mind, only the most difficult, the most necessary, and the most transformative step of all remains, so that all this leaves your head and becomes your own skin. Hearing about Stoicism is something incredibly easy, and reading the deep words of a Roman emperor in the comfort of your home can be something extremely comforting for your intellectual ego. But absolutely none of that will change your life in a real way if these ideas stay locked only on paper or in your imagination. Epictetus, the slave who overcame all imaginable adversities to become one of the greatest masters in human history, was totally implacable about this specific point of the philosophical journey. He used to say with authority that you should not waste time explaining your philosophy to others, but rather you must incorporate it integrally through each of your daily actions. Knowledge that does not translate immediately into a change of character and behavior is just empty intellectual noise and pure vanity. You now have in your hands a complete map for the mental strength that the vast majority of people around you will never find in all their existence. The practical challenge I propose to you today is what we call the porch challenge. Do not make the mistake of trying to apply Marcus Aurelius's 9 lessons at once, because your mind is addicted to old patterns and will try to sabotage this sudden change with all its strength. Choose right now just one single rule from the ones we discussed here and apply it with absolute rigor in the next 60 minutes of your real life. If you chose the lesson of the delayed response, commit to staying in total silence in the face of the next provocation, or the next annoyance that arises in your path without prior notice. If you chose the attention diet, turn off your cell phone right now, put it in another room, and look at the real world around you with a renewed curiosity and a deep presence. Stoicism is not a mystical religion nor an abstract academic theory to be discussed in classrooms, but rather a constant combat practice to be used in the trenches of everyday life. You are building your own internal citadel, brick by brick, through small, repeated decisions. Every conscious and rational decision you make strengthens your walls against the external chaos that tries to invade you at every moment. Between 30 and 50 years old, you no longer have time to waste with theories that do not work in practice. Your life demands results, demands calm, and demands an internal leadership that is unshakable. If this content brought the clarity and strength you were looking for to face your challenges, consider joining our legion of strong minds so that we can continue this journey of fortification together. The world outside will continue to be a noisy, unfair, and unpredictable place, but you no longer need to be a victim of it. From this exact moment on, you walk with the protective silence and with the innate strength of an emperor who governs himself before trying to govern the world. Finally, understand that sovereignty over yourself is the only victory that really matters and that no one can take away from you. Occupy your throne now and remain on guard, because your virtue is the only good you will take until the end of your days. Your new life begins at the exact moment you decide to act instead of just reflect. Peace is an achievement, and your training has started now.